Hello everyone, welcome to this video on solving problem 1603 from LeetCode with namespaces. So we have solved this problem already without the actual code structure that this problem requires. So we wrote a simple solution without classes, without namespaces, without anything. We just kept track of the parking system state in a variable. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then it means you probably missed the first video. So it will be linked in the description, and it's when we solve this problem for the first time. In this video, we will take that solution and structure it a bit more to show you how you would actually scale something like this in APL. So you can pause the video now if you want to read the description, or if you want to go ahead and actually check the first solution. Otherwise, let's get going. Let's take the simpler solution and structure it a bit more. So namespaces in APL, I think of them as kind of containers for functions, variables, operators, code in general. And it's not the same thing as a class, but sometimes it can kind of resemble a class in the sense that you have a namespace and then you can use the dot to access the functions inside that namespace or the variables inside that namespace. But it's not a class, and it's not OOP because there's no inheritance, there's no class. The thing you would call static methods, I think, and there's no shared methods, etc., etc. But it's kind of useful to think of namespaces as containers. And for our particular case, we want this namespace, this container, to contain the state of the parking system, so how many spots there are left, and we want it to have an associated function, this addCar function, that says if I am able to park my car there or not. And so, in order to create a namespace, what you do is you open the editor, but then when you're about to type in the name of the namespace, and let's call it PS, which is short for parking system, you precede its name with this with a log primitive, and it tells APL to open the editor for a namespace, and it starts with just the bare minimums for you to code a namespace. And so what this namespace must contain is the state, which are the parking spots, which start as 0, 0, 0, and then it should have this addCar function that adds the car. But this one we already know more or less what it does, because we already have a solution for the problem. So I can go ahead and copy this code and paste it in here, and now I just have to modify it. So let me paste it here. Let's see if I can do this. Okay. So what's going on here is when we add a car, we were giving the parking the parking system as the left argument, but now it's stored inside the namespace, right? So the state of the parking space is in the namespace itself, so we don't need to give it as the left argument. We can just use it. So we access the state of the parking space, and we try to create this new parking space. Okay? And then what do we need to do? Instead of returning the new state, we actually want to update it. So what we do is the parking space becomes this. We max it out with the 0. And if you don't know why we are doing this, you can either pause the video and figure it out by yourself, or watch the video where we actually solved the problem. And then we can just return the boolean. And so this keeps track of the state of the parking system. Well, I must have hit some keyboard shortcuts. Yeah, so this gives me the state of the parking system, and this adds a car of type omega to the parking system, or tries to add a car. Okay, and that's basically it. Now I can fix this. I can go over to File, fix the whole script, and now if I can also press escape to fix it. Now if I go to the session and if I type ps dot, then auto completion is telling me that there's these two things available. There's the ps.ps and then there's the ps.addCar. For example, if I try to add a car of type 3, well, obviously I can't because the parking space is empty. Now what we need to do is we need to write the code for a basic quote unquote constructor. So for the very first solution, we basically did nothing. Now what we want to say is, well, the new parking, let's create a function that is called new parking system, and it creates a new parking system in a namespace. And the way we do this is, well, first we need to create a copy of that namespace. And the way you do that is, well, this one I never know, so I have to test it out with you. There's this quad and s function, and this is what we will be using, but it's now on the right it should take, I think it's the name of the namespace you want to copy, and it returns a copy of the namespace. Let's call it ps copy just for this test. And yeah, okay, so this worked. So if I do ps copy dot oh, okay, so for some reason the copy is one level deeper, which is not what we wanted. But I can see the point being the things are there and they are separate. So I can assign this. Let's pretend this is that, and then if I take a look at the original one, you can see that the original one is unchanged. So I effectively copied the namespace, but for some reason it's not it's deeper in there. So probably this was wrong. So instead of giving it the string, yeah, that was probably the problem. It takes the actual namespace. So let's take a look at ps copy. Yes, exactly. So this was what I was saying. I never know for sure. I have to test it. So quadns takes a namespace on the right, and it creates a copy of that namespace. So pscopy.ps is the same as ps.ps, but now I can change this one, and the original one stays the same. So you can see that we were able to create a copy of the parking system. So actually, if we want to create a new parking system, what we need to do is first we make a copy of the PS, or actually this is no, it's not, because I had already closed it. So I can do some multi-line input. So the copy of the parking space is created like this. And then I need to update the parking spots of the parking system to my argument, and then I just return the copy. And so if I want to create an actual parking system, I do this new parking system thingy, and now I can say, well, can I add a car of type 1? Yes, I can. Can I add a car of type 2? Well, yes, I can. How many parking spots do I have left? Oh, wow, this is not working. Okay, it's always good when something doesn't work, because it gives you the chance to debug code with me. So let's take a look at the parking namespace parking system code. So add car function. Could it be that it's not, so it's clearly reading, so it's probably assigning to, okay, sure. So diffs create local variables. So this variable I'm creating here inside this function, this is temporary, right? So when I leave the function, this no longer exists. And so when I try to do this, I actually want to overwrite that over there. But the diff looks at this, it actually says, okay, let's create this new variable. So there's a way to trick the diff to actually update the state, which is what we want. And that's by saying, for example, write tech gets. So this is a modified assignment, and it's similar to things like, for example, let's see, if you're used to Python, it would be something like I plus equals 1 to increment, or I plus plus, fairly well in languages like C and whatever. And the point here is that dialog generalizes this, and so you can do something like variable f gets value, and this is the same as doing variable gets variable f value. So notice that this is being expanded to this. And so if instead of a generic f, if we use the write tag, this gets expanded to this, and var write tag value is the same as value. So it's the simple assignment, but write tag forces the diff to try and modify the variable. But this variable has never been defined inside the diff, so it looks around and it says, okay, there's the state there, so let's try and modify the state, and then it just assigns to it. So we can press escape now, and now it should work. So let's repeat this. So the parking system, let's create a new one. Let's try to add a car of type 1 and add a car of type 2. Now, how many parking spots do I have left? Oh, none. Okay. So surely if I try to add a car of type 1 now, it should fail. And it failed. And there's still 0, 0, 0 parking spots left. Okay, so now I can actually assign to this by hand. For example, there's 100 spots for big cars. Now, can I add a car that's of type 3, which is small? Well, no, I can't. And the spots remain the same. So this is an example of how you could do this with namespaces. You wrote the code for this simple namespace. It keeps track of the state. It has this little function that reads the state and modifies it. And we also created a function, a helper function, to create this. So let's edit the new parking system. So we have a function to copy the namespace. To copy the namespace with quad ns. It initializes the state and then it returns the copy. So this is how you could solve it with namespaces, and you will find a link to another alternative solution using OOP, so oriented programming in APL, in the description. So we will also try to solve this with actual object-oriented programming. So feel free to take a look at that video. Make a pull request if you want to add your own solutions to the GitHub repository, which should be linked in the description. And if you are done with this problem, then I will see you in the next video. Bye.